Welcome to the Thoughtful Leader podcast. My name is Ben Brearley. I'm a leadership coach and the founder of Thoughtful Leader. The Thoughtful Leader podcast is all about short, sharp leadership advice because thoughtful leadership is good leadership. Welcome to episode 322 of the Thoughtful Leader podcast. In this episode, we're going to be talking about a situation where you might feel like you're spinning your wheels, or you're not making progress about something you want to be making progress on. Or maybe your team is not being productive and they're not getting things done. Maybe they seem stuck and you're not really sure what the cause is. So I'm going to throw up a bit of food for thought in this episode, which we'll get into right now. Now, what I've noticed in some teams and workplaces is that sometimes we go round and round in circles. We're not really making any progress, but we keep talking about the same sort of things, like we should be working on a project or an initiative, but we don't seem to be making any progress. There's no traction, and we keep coming back to the same sort of situations and discussions again and again. Now, obviously, that's a frustrating thing as a leader, and you might find it with yourself where you're not making progress on something and you're not getting things done. But you might also find it in your team when you're expecting people to do things, but they're not really making progress. They're not getting the work done. They're not hitting their targets. And you're wondering, what the barriers are here? Like what sort of things are involved and why are we not getting anywhere with this thing? And why do we keep talking about it all the time? Now, the first thing I would get you to look at if you're faced with this situation is, do you have the time and capacity to focus on this thing? Now, you might just say, okay, well, do you have time in your day to work on it? Okay, that's one thing. But do you actually have the mental headspace to be able to fit this thing into your working life right now as well? And that's really the capacity. Because we can only work on so many things. And I've worked in quite a few organizations where it seems like we're trying to focus on 10 things when maybe we should focus on 3 or 4 and do them really well. Because by focusing on 10 things, we end up not really getting a lot of things done anyway, and we end up doing about 3 or 4 of them at the end of the day after all. So capacity and time is a really important factor here. And this leads me to the next one. So obviously capacity and time is important, but it actually stems from a lack of focus and direction. So if you have never been given direction or been given the mandate to actually focus on some project or initiative, there's a good chance that there's not a driving force behind it. So in an example, we'll think about, okay, for a team that you're working with and you feel like they should be making progress on some sort of initiative, but they also have a lot of other work to do. And you've never really told them that this is your top priority. We've just expected them to hit the targets and get the work done. So if you're struggling for capacity and time, and you add to that a lack of direction and commitment or priority, then you're often going to see that other things take precedent, especially when we're talking about things like improvement opportunities or new projects that are creating something new or making a change. Because what happens when people are overwhelmed and they don't have clear direction is they generally revert back to the status quo, which is, well, I'm doing my business as usual and I'm firefighting whatever issues I have for the day. I'm doing my general day-to-day work. I'm not focusing on anything new. So what you need is a clear direction and a commitment from whoever you need it from, like your manager, for example, your leader, to actually focus on this thing as a priority. And sometimes I find that thoughtful leaders don't state priorities clearly because they don't want to seem like a tyrant or being too directive or authoritative. So they sort of like to let their team work it out for themselves. But unfortunately, this lack of direction or lack of commitment to a direction really means that we'll spin our wheels for longer. So it's that capacity and time. But that is a lack of capacity and time is often exacerbated by a lack of direction and a commitment to a priority or a commitment to make this thing, initiative, whatever it is, a focus of our efforts. Which leads to another problem I see in teams quite a lot, which is where teams are spinning their wheels, they're not taking charge, they're not stepping up and leading something because they have a fear of accountability and commitment to this work. Now, let me give you an example. Been working with a team recently where their business as usual work is going well. The normal processes are being followed. They do their work at a good rate. But there's a potential to expand the function of that team and the impact of that team by taking on some extra projects and actually building out the team, increasing the capacity, bringing on new team members, and increasing the role of that team plays. Now, the people working in that team are good workers, they're committed, they do a good job. The leader of this team is sort of expecting them to step up and push forward with this initiative. But actually, they're not seeing that happen. So frustration occurs. You think, well, why are these people spinning their wheels? Why aren't they making any progress on this thing, which is really important? And partially, I think in this situation, there's a fear of taking accountability and committing to this work. Because when you've got people who are committed to their business as usual tasks, and they're just doing a little bit extra here and there, and they're doing a good job, then you expect them to step up and actually drive something that's going to increase the status of the team, the amount of work the team handles, and the role that team plays in the organization. All of a sudden, it makes it a big deal. So sometimes people can feel a bit of fear there because they're comfortable in the day-to-day role that they're doing. Expanding their remit is going to be quite a big step up in terms of accountability and commitment. And so they fear that and they may shy away from it, which is why you might not see them taking on and proactively pushing forward with this initiative. However, some of the reason for that also is because there's been a lack of direction provided. So there hasn't been an explicit focus that we are going to focus on this thing and we're going to set a target and we want this thing to be up and running or completed by this date and time. So just to recap, there's a couple of different things here. A lack of time and capacity will mean that people spin their wheels and they often focus on business as usual tasks. The second thing is a lack of clear direction in that no one has said out loud, this is the thing that is your most important priority, and therefore people can work on other things instead. Then combined with that can be this fear of accountability and commitment, which means if I step up and take on the accountability, I'm putting myself at risk. And because we haven't really been given a clear mandate for this task, it's easier for me just to not do this work and just to focus on something else that I'm more comfortable with. And the last factor that I think is important to pull out here as well, if you feel like your team is spinning your wheels or spinning their wheels on something that you think is important, is lacking the skills or the knowledge to actually get the work done. So even if you provide clear direction, you say, this is what we're looking for, here's the target we should achieve, you might find that progress doesn't really happen because the actual core skills and knowledge to complete the work are not really present in the team, or the team member doesn't have that stuff. So what that does is it introduces, a lot of wheel spinning because the person doesn't know the next step to take, how to break it down and plan it out. So, and often what happens is if that is combined with a lack of clear direction, people can focus on other tasks instead of the thing that you really want them to do. So just to step back here, it all starts from clear direction, a spoken commitment that this is the most important priority we have, and these are the focus areas you have and should be working on in the next 6 months or whatever it is. So what I notice is when teams spin their wheels like this, there's a lack of commitment to that direction. There's a lack of capacity and time, which means we focus on other work that's maybe not as important. We have a fear of accountability and commitment. People are afraid to step up because, they might get in trouble and they might think that, this is a big deal, but I haven't been given clear direction to step up, and so I'm just going to do what I'm doing at the moment. And people may not have the skills or knowledge to do the work, which is why they spin their wheels as well. And one last thing I'll add to this in terms of the fear of accountability and commitment is that sometimes people will wait to be granted permission. There are some people that are very proactive and they're going to step up and just do the work and take charge by themselves. But there are other people who feel like they need permission to step out of their role boundaries and to be proactive and to, take a step up and take responsibility. And it's not a matter of saying, well, those people should just step up. Sometimes we need to help those people by giving them clear direction and asking them to step up and work on this new initiative or progress this piece of work, explicitly asking them, giving them permission to drive the initiative that you want them to drive. And that includes giving them the accountability, telling them what they are accountable for, what sort of decisions they are able to make, and what permission they have to actually push forward and make a difference in that initiative. So this episode, I hope, was useful just to get you thinking about some of the factors when you see teams spin their wheels, or you might notice yourself spinning your wheels as well. Are you lacking some of these things I'm talking about in today's episode? So I'm interested in your thoughts on this. You can let me know your feedback on this. If you see wheel spinning, what do you think's at play here? What have I missed? What are some other things that you think are missing here? thoughtfulleader.com/podcast/322 is the show notes page. So leave a comment there. And of course, if you are stuck in wheel spinning mode and your team is as well, and you want to actually make some progress, leadership coaching can help you to get unlocked. So working with me might be an option. If you want to do that, go to that show notes page and you can get in touch on my leadership coaching page there as well. There's a link to that on that show notes page. So thank you very much for listening. If you haven't already and you like this podcast, it'd be great to give me a positive rating on your app of choice, a 5-star review, whatever that looks like, and helps me get the word out about Thoughtful Leader podcast and get more people listening to it and improving the quality of leadership around the world. So thank you very much for listening, and I'll be back next week.